All right. Hi, I'm Maura Eliza from Flex Health with Maura. I'm here with Lindsay. She has been doing some bioresonance feedback with me for the last month. Just to give a little idea, you're about halfway through a typical protocol. You're at the break point. We do a month of work, then we take a break, then we do another month. But we were talking about her responses and going over how she was feeling a month ago. And we just thought the results were so amazing. We wanted to share them with you. So thank you, Lindsay, for joining us.
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
so your journey towards healing has been pretty extended. Tell us a little bit about like how long you've been trying to feel better, how you were feeling, what was kind of leading you to seek care.
Sure. So probably about 6 or 7 years ago, just kind of I thought was I was in a process of grief. I was a mom of young babies and just thought, man, I am run down. Like I can't quite get it together. I was in a really bad place emotionally and mentally, and then moved over to St. Louis from Alton, Illinois, and started seeing a natural physician over here. And kind of through that, just trying to get on top of some, I had a lot of GI issues, which our family kind of deals with anyway. That actually started when I was in college, and we pinned down gluten as the main irritant. So um, that helped significantly. But then later on, it was like, man, I'm just like, I can't get energy. I can't get my thoughts together. Like, what's happening? And then a few years, 2.5, 3 years back, I found out I had Lyme disease, and that was a chronic condition. I had a recent infection and a chronic one. And then recently I found out that moved into a rheumatoid sort of a condition. So, um, yeah, just running the gamut of like, why do I feel like crap? And all these labs that aren't pointing to anything, and needing some answers, but not getting many.
Okay, great. So tell me a little bit more about, you've mentioned some of the mental stuff and some of the diagnoses that you've gotten. Tell us a little bit about how you're feeling just as recently as when we started working together a month ago.
Sure. I mean, gosh, you were a breath of fresh air. Just meeting you and the knowledge that you have. I had never heard some things before. No conventional doctor ever mentioned restructuring your water, and nobody talked about, energetic blocks. Nobody talked about how to deal with the like emotional things to help the physical things. So that was really one of those like, okay, so this is a different approach. Let's dive in and learn as much as we can, which I'm still learning. So yeah, that has kind of been where that was a huge key change.
So you mentioned seeing natural practitioners here and you've mentioned conventional doctors.
Mhm.
Anybody else that you've seen, like acupuncturists, chiropractors?
Right. Yeah. I have a really good friend in Godfrey, Illinois, who's a chiropractor, and she's very much of natural wellness, and she deals a lot with nutrition and hormone imbalances. So I was being treated for adrenal fatigue as well. And just kind of my body was really out of whack, probably due to that grief period and then just being way overstressed. I commit myself too much a lot of times and neglect myself and put everybody else first. So, had to take a huge step back and say, like, I'm completely breaking apart. So what am I going to do? Like, I'm going to not be good for anybody.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you're like talking about the emotional and like the giving to others and then talking about breaking apart, because one of the things that you had mentioned before was like muscle pain and like headaches and brain fog. And we'll get to those in a little bit because I want to talk about how you felt before compared to how you felt now. But let's talk just ballpark over those 6 years between diagnostics and supplements. I don't know if you ever took or was recommended pharmaceuticals and office visits, all of those things. Can you give me a rough idea of how much you spent over those 6 years?
Oh man. And even before that, I mean, in the thousands for sure. A lot out of pocket, a lot. Um, some labs were covered by insurance, some were not. Part of them were, part of them weren't. But, you know, anything from steroids, from being told I had IBS to like, you know, 20 different herbal supplements that just also felt very congested and too much.
Mhm.
So when you were like, we're going to make sure you're hydrated and some baking soda and some, you know, citric acid and bentonite clay, I'm like, I have all those things in my house. I don't have to spend a dime on that, you know. Was very refreshing to feel like, okay, so not only is it something manageable, but also financially manageable.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
too.
I mean, I kind of created my packages. They do sometimes give people a little bit of sticker shock to look at them, but I
Right.
created those with my own experience in mind. And it sounds like you had a similar experience
Mhm.
where you find this great practitioner, you're really excited to go see them, you go in to try to get some answers, and you get hit with all these diagnostics and like they're left braining, and this test yielded no results, so that means it's money down the drain. This test was no results, this test was no results, and like even sometimes the no results doesn't make sense. And so you're just kind of nickel and dimed out
Mhm.
of, before I actually was talking to another woman the other day, and she's like, my husband and I just sat down and looked at how much we spent. I had no idea, because she's just been like handing a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there. So I wanted to provide my clients with an opportunity to see, like, up front, here's what it's going to cost. The additional stuff on top of that is very minimal. And it just helps you get better results. You can still get results without it. So yeah, that was my experience too, having spent thousands of dollars and still be
Not getting any results.
not any results or not much results. I mean, I know people who have refinanced their houses because
Right.
of their health stuff. Whereas I think it's just much more in integrity to say, hey, this is about what it's going to cost
Yeah. And
overall.
even just the emotional cost of like, no one believes me. I'm being
Mm,
told by this physician that everything is fine and you're stressed, or, you know, try to reduce anxiety. It's like, that, you know, like I can't get rid of my kids. That's a lot of stress, you know.
right, right.
I
Those
can't pay the
generic.
bills and all the things to do.
Yeah,
Like there's just no way you can completely eliminate that type of, you know, stress. But um as far as just the internal things that are sort of churning you know, again, it was like slapping band-aids on the symptoms rather than the root cause of it.
right, right. So we're going to get into like the specific things that changed for you over the last month, but we've been working together for a month. How soon did you notice changes from when we started?
I'd say the second session was really eye-opening. The first one, I think I had a little tummy something or other, so I wasn't sure if it was the bioresonance or if it was, I think I just picked up something, a little goober from a kid, but you know, it was just kind of like needed a whole day to just sleep. But
Mm,
the second one, I had this surge of energy and playfulness with the kids that I had not felt in a long time. And that was one frustration of like, I just want to play with my kids and be present. Like, I miss that. I miss, you know, feeling silly instead of tired and grumpy and in pain. So that was the big eye opener of like, this is something different, you know. I
And
haven't
for
felt
the
that in a long.
for the people who don't know, we do an intense month when we do our month. So we're doing 3 sessions a month. So if you got notice a change on the second session, that's within the first week. You were actually
Right.
noticing a change. And that, oh my gosh, that's so great. Like you're retapping in with the mother that you can be when you're feeling well. And it's really hard to
Sorry,
be
I've got a lot
like, speaking of, is there one like getting your attention right now?
not one of mine.
Not yours.
It's like, wait a minute, hold on.
Well, let's
Sorry.
let's go ahead and wrap it up, because I know your kids are kind of waiting on you. So you had been having muscle pain, twitches, headaches at least twice a week, constant brain fog when we started. That was what you
Right.
put in your intake form. Tell me a little bit about what's changed there.
Yeah, so the headaches are gone. That was one of those that was really prominent of like, man, I can't get my head off the pillow. I feel like I just need to lay down. And then, you know, feeling relief from that was huge. it was almost kind of radiating out my ears of, like just this dizziness. I told you before of like vertigo feeling or like underwater almost,
Oh, wow.
which is scary, especially when taking care of kids. Because if you're driving and you feel out of control, then you're worried about crashing into someone or something, or, and then there's a million distractions going on. So it's this sensory overload of like, there's noises, there's lights, there's questions, there's, any sort of thing on the road, emergency vehicles coming through or whatever would be, just felt very overwhelming.
Mhm.
And I don't have that anymore. I don't like driving it at night, but that's that's kind of one of the next hurdles of like, okay, if we can conquer that, then we'll be okay. But
Wow.
um,
But that's
yeah, so just feeling a little more like bodily in control um, is a good feeling where I'm like, oh, I feel like I can function daily, living things normally.
that's amazing. You also mentioned some skin issues that you were like often feeling itchy and burning, chilled.
Yeah, yeah, very fluctuating. With my temperature's always been really cold and feeling like I can't quite warm up, like bone chilled, and it'll be like 75 outside. My husband's like, why are you wearing a sweatshirt? I'm like, because I'm cold.
Yeah.
And my labs with anemia were showing that like the cells that have hemoglobin producing that iron are just not at optimal levels. And so I think we'll see a big shift in that. Hopefully, that if I need to do labs again, hopefully not for a while, that would be looking different, because it feels different than it
Mhm.
used to. um
And to be clear, we do sometimes layer on a couple other little things based on what we see in the scan and experiences like that. So there were some, a few small minor kind of supplements or supports. So there is a little bit for you to be doing, but we do specifically try not to make it a list of 20 things that is like really
right.
overwhelming and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing that is nice, that it does, again, it feels manageable. Like, oh, let's make sure you're doing some grounding while you have water. Like, that's an easy fix. I can
Good.
implement that into my day for sure.
And you feel like it's working, like you can tell that it's working too.
Mhm.
Which kind of brings me to another thing that you mentioned, that during this month you got to, it's kind of hard when you're feeling bad all the time to know like piece out like what's making you feel bad or what's making you feel better. But over this month you made a discovery about something that is just like not really great for you right now that your body can't handle. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Oh, well, yeah, alcohol being the big one, but also processed sugar too.
Mm.
I forgot to mention that earlier, but those two, and maybe the sugar in the alcohol combined with it also. But um, yeah, I mean, talk about bloat and discomfort and joint pain. Like, my body just goes on fire whenever I have any of those things in my system. So yeah, we went on a road trip to Florida, which was a 12+ hour trip, and eating the like gas station candy was
Right.
not beneficial at all. So I got out of the car and it's like, I'm swollen and sore, and that was a bad idea.
Right. But it is significant to be able to feel well enough that you notice when something triggered you into feeling poorly, like that, I mean, gosh, what I would have given to like have known that back in the day.
Yeah, and yeah, I know, it's like hindsight now is like, oh man, I guess now that I'm getting older, I'm more aware of it. But if I'd have known that when I was younger, I would have probably made some different choices.
Right. All right. And I mean, I tell my friends, like, I love to talk about poop because I think it is so foundational. Or on the retreats and stuff, they're like, yeah, you do talk about poop a lot. But you did have some, I mean, because it always tells us and shows us what's going on. It's so foundational to health, kind of like hydration. I would pair those two, really important, as
Mhm.
being really important. So share a little bit about, you mentioned that you saw some changes. So share a little bit about that, just as much as you're comfortable.
Yeah, well, consistency wise, way healthier. It's not that pendulum swing anymore.
Hmm.
Color, even the odor is better. Same with urine, color is clearer. odor is definitely not as present. So just, I feel like in general, the waste products coming out are indicating things are healthier inside.
Yay. Okay. Next on the list is you had a diagnosis or had experienced some neuropathy, which is, numb, tingling. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's been with the Lyme disease. I mean, that, and Lyme is like, what symptom is what, like where is this coming from? And so just feeling like my feet were super sensitive, and even hands, like it's almost like a Raynaud's like
Mhm.
syndrome, where they get really cold and really painful.
Mhm.
But yeah, my feet, if I would drop anything, it felt like I was dropping an elephant on my foot, like just so much pain. And that hasn't been as bad lately. So that's really something to celebrate. It also, for me, I do massage and I'm on my feet and using my hands. So it's kind of crucial that I'm able to function in those areas too.
Yeah, certainly. So kind of emotionally, let's talk about kind of some of the frustrations you were having back then and how you're feeling now, like with all these changes.
Yeah. So, before it was more of like, why can't I feel good? And why, and no one understands this. It's such a silent, we got some really loud cicadas. Just not feeling understood, or, it doesn't look like I'm sick. So people just assume I'm not. And even my loved ones who know I am, my sister was one that's really good about checking in. And then I have a friend who's in the same boat as I am with Lyme, and she has RA. She's also one of those that'll ask once in a while, how are you feeling? And of course you too. So um, those are those friendships that you're like, okay, I'm going to nurture this one because they are a true friend. And not that, my spouse and mom and all of them aren't loving because they don't ask, but it was hard to feel like I didn't have the support I needed. And it was probably just because they know me so well, and on the day to day they forget to ask.
Right.
So
And really with chronic pain, that is, and chronic illness in general, that's what people mention, is that they don't have a cast. So people
right.
can't obviously see how they're feeling. And a lot of times they're putting out so much effort just to feel like participate and
Yeah.
be there, that people forget that it's taking a lot of effort for them to just be, it's really hard to be nice when you're in pain.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And that was, I felt so short tempered, so grumpy, so like I just hadn't like who I had become. And so feeling like I'm getting back to the real me. I'm getting back to the Lindsay who has patience and can like stop a minute and think through something and really feel like I have, have that clear thought process instead of just like immediately firing off. I've heard a lot of people with Lyme say that Lyme rage is like a real thing, and that
Mm.
they know they're spiraling out of control, but they can't stop it. And it's, one of those like complete frustrations that they don't want to lash out at their loved ones. They don't want to be that angry person. So feeling like I'm coming back to me feels good.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was thinking as you're talking about it, the bioresonance feedback therapy is exclusively a frequency therapy. And those frequencies of emotions are also being addressed even as we're kind of looking at the organs and things like that. So it is interesting that, it could be working on both levels, that you're actually physically feeling better, but your emotions have also been kind of brought into like a more calm, harmonious state as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So just a little bit for people who are like, what the heck is this bioresonance feedback? And it is, like I said, a frequency medicine. It is done, or frequency therapy. It's done remotely. So that's how we are able to do 3 sessions a week on a person without totally screwing up their schedule.
Right.
But that is actually kind of one of the questions for people, is that like, are you really, I'm not there. How can you be working on me? The short
Yeah.
answer is through quantum entanglement. And pretty often I come across people who can feel it during the session or shortly after. You were one of those people. Can you share the things that you felt with all or most of your sessions?
Well, so the first ones, like I said, were kind of more of like a, a rebound in energy and kind of like, ooh, I feel a little bit playful again. And then other ones were completely like I just needed to rest. Like my body was instantly. There was one day where you were like, oh, I already worked on you because I thought you hadn't yet, but then I had just woken up from a nap for like an hour and a half or whatever, and you're like, that was the time I was working on you. It's like, yeah, my body just like turned off. Like I knew I needed to rest to be able to heal.
Yeah.
um so yeah, it was, kind of day to day. I would find I slept better a lot of the sessions that were late at night,
Hmm.
unless I forgot that you were doing it and I had like my phone or a heating pad on or something, it's like, oh shoot, did I just
Right.
mess that up?
Right, right. Yeah, we do try to keep the other frequencies, interfering frequencies out of the way. But yeah, so that's great. Let's see. What would you say to anyone who's considering diving into bioresonance feedback?
I mean, I would recommend it. I wouldn't, what's it gonna hurt? If you've tried everything, then why not try something that has the potential to really be different and make you feel better. And it's not the conventional route for sure, but also it's not hard to do. You don't have to do anything. Like literally just have a picture and schedule when you're going to do the sessions, and then you let me know usually when you're doing one, and it's like, okay, I'm going to make sure I just set my phone aside and that's it. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, of course, doing sort of the protocol work alongside it helps. If you're just doing the bioresonance but not hydrating or resting well or eating healthy or anything like that, it's going to make a difference. The nights that I stayed up way too late, it's like, oh man, I'm of course like tired in the morning, but um that's another thing I've noticed is I feel much more rested in the mornings.
Oh, yeah.
um Before I felt like a train had run over me, I just couldn't get my eyes open, couldn't get my head off the pillow. But now it's like, 7:30 hits and I'm like, I think it's time to wake up. Like
Nice.
trying to start the day.
Yay. Well, and these are pretty great results considering you've just had like half of the typical protocol. And we'll maybe check back after another round,
Yeah,
after we take a little break. And thank you so much for sharing your experience.
yeah. Thank you for your work and friendship.
Absolutely. I'll talk to you soon.